Hey, audience. Welcome back to the Climb That Mountain podcast. I'm your host of hosts, Brian Castle, and I've got a real special person with me today, and I'm going to try to make her cry as I introduce her. When you meet Chase Clark, as I did about 18 months ago, is that right, Chase?
Hmm.
And you were kind of coming off your freshman year of college at that time. Chase is one of those people when you meet her, after you meet her, you think, I just met a person of some consequence, a person who not only has that vibe of doing important things but actually does them. And I had the pleasure of meeting her through our mutual friend Natasha Sistrunk Robinson. um, and what an impression Chase made on me as a graduate of Natasha's Leadership Academy for Black Girls Leadership Links. Um, that alone told me that Leadership Links was doing amazing work. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun for us to talk today about your journey, Chase. Chase became a social entrepreneur in elementary school. Is that right?
Yes,
Late
sir.
elementary school.
You got it.
So I want you to share that. I can't remember what I was doing when I was 10 or 11, probably learning how to curse and tell girls that I liked them. Will you check the box? Yes or no if you like me back. Chase was a person with big ideas back then. So you started a nonprofit in elementary school. Tell us about that journey. How does that happen?
Yeah. So I do want to preface this by saying that I think, I get a lot of credit for the nonprofit at that age, but I do believe I might not have been learning how to cuss, but I must have been doing something else that is more in line with what a second grader would be doing at that time. Maybe I was receiving the notes, maybe I was passing the, who knows? I was definitely outside at recess doing those fun kid things too. But yeah, so the nonprofit formally started when I was in the second grade. It was a product of a class project. We got this project, and the teacher asked us to do a research opportunity on the grossest part of the body to us, whatever that may be, it was the grossest part of the body. And so from there, I decided that the mouth was just disgusting, couldn't stand it, nothing, no nothing. And did my project, I guess the PowerPoint or whatever the presentation portion of it was. And I've been so graciously blessed to have parents who encourage us, myself and my two siblings, to go above and beyond and like literally everything that you do. And it's been that way since we were that age. And so I remember my mom, asking, well, what is going to be the element that's going to make your presentation stand out? We had just recently transitioned to another church, and I got connected with a woman who either at that time she was my Girl Scout troop leader or she was soon going to become my Girl Scout troop leader. And she was actually a dentist. I told her about my project, and she so graciously offered some additional dental hygiene products that she kind of, I guess, just had or that had been cycled out or whatever. I passed those out to my class, and it was received really well from both my teacher and my peers. And so, some days after, I had some peers come back to ask for additional items for either themselves or for their family members. And so, I think that was, or that's how I understand my first formal introduction to economic inequality. And so from there, just going to my parents, having more conversations about why people don't have particular things, I think just was really the spark that started the idea of the nonprofit off. From there, it just really quickly took off as I just kept finding out about all of these different problems in my community. Most of them were kind of in line with whatever or wherever I kind of found myself age wise. So I think immediately after that, some of the projects that we did looked like funding. Like the finishing balances on school lunches, as we'd found out that specifically in Greensboro and High Point, this might also be a thing elsewhere, but I have not well researched on that. Um, but if you had a balance on your lunch tab, like you'd have to get a completely separate lunch. which of course is a very vulnerable experience for kids that are creating identity, creating relationships, understanding themselves to the world. And so from there, we just started to alleviate or kind of rectify some of those lunch debts, paying for people to go on their field trips. So just kind of collecting funding in order for there to be funding set aside for those who could not go, because again, you're kind of singled out when everyone gets up to start their day. They have their lunch in hand and you are kind of just still sitting there, or depending on the teacher and how they handle it, you might just altogether be called out like you're not going. And so having experiences like that were kind of the catalyst for what started off. And from there, the bigger issue became, where do we get money from to keep continuing these projects? Because in the beginning, it was kind of just little small donations from people that I would talk to, or just contributions from my parents. We had to find a more sustainable way to keep this going, as I think both my parents quickly realized, okay, this is not a little school project that she's doing anymore. And so, one of the first ways that we kind of transitioned into fundraising, and I think I would also mark this as the time in which we started functioning closer to what an organization would look like. We started fundraising through collecting aluminum cans and taking them to the local like recycling place. And so it was just the funniest thing as I look back on it. Like we would have like five huge trash bags full of cans just sitting in the kitchen, and some of them would be from us, but as people started to catch on to what we were doing, and what I was doing, they started to just literally drop off cans at our front door, like no explanation, just a big trash bag of cans. And so that's kind of where we started, and since that day forward, we've just really been focused on finding those issues in our local or international communities and doing what we can to alleviate them.
I'm struck by how different you were from other children. Maybe not every child, but most children. Most children, I have an 8-year-old, so kind of the same age group. And my son is very empathetic. He's the kind of kid that, somebody gets hurt on the playground, he goes and attends to them. Um, but children are mostly a combination of empathy and being self absorbed. So they very quickly switch off that care that kind of emerged and sprung them to action when their buddy falls. And then they go back to thinking about Minecraft or whatever, right? And you were different. Like even at that young age, you had, we work with about a third of our clients are nonprofit leaders like you are. And even as a child, a young child, you seem to have that drive that I've picked up over and over and over again from people who became nonprofit leaders as adults. And that's the kind of that walking with empathy. But then that moment kind of sticks with you and you're like, I've had other people say, I just couldn't abide that.
Mm.
I couldn't let that status quo continue. I had to do something about it versus somebody ought to do something about it. And you're going after things too. Another observation I have is we kind of complicate things sometimes when we're engaging in do-goodery.
Mhm.
Um, it seems like you and your family, I've met the Queen, love the Queen. Shout out to Selena. I know she's listening. Um, y'all seem to have this uncanny driver within you to focus on the most basic things. And that's what I love about the mission of Chase's Chance is that the kind of stuff y'all are attacking is the stuff that drives me nuts when I hear about it. And yeah, I don't think a child should ever have a balance. I think we ought to feed children, and I'll fight over that. I also, and I've noticed, when they send the field trip form, my son's in the neighborhood public school. And it's like attach a check for $10 for it to cover whatever. And I'll think, who's does everybody have the $10? And they don't. And there are times when these opportunities come up where we'll try to do a little bit.
Mm.
But I think the power of your message and what you're doing is you're putting people together. Tell us about kind of what makes this organization go from kind of a galvanizing, connecting standpoint, because these are age old problems. We seem to make them worse year after year.
Hmm.
So what do y'all do to bring people together?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the answer to that has definitely changed as we've evolved and gotten older, and gotten more experienced.
Yeah,
I think in the beginning, when we started off, like you have the incredible factor of being a small little girl, really cute face, and this really big need. And I think it was easy for people to identify with that. Like you were saying, a lot of the things that we were seeking to solve weren't necessarily big ticket issues at that point. It was very specific to our local community. And I think I would hope and I think I assume that it was a lot of issues that people by themselves were already considering thinking about, but really unsure about how do I actually support these things, just not necessarily having the knowledge. And so it was, I don't want to say it was super easy at first, because of course everything has challenges, but I think it was, um, very accessible for people to begin to come into, relationship with us, with me, with Chase's Chance, because it was allowing them a channel for number one education to learn about the things that were going on from someone who was seeing it from that particular viewpoint. But also, it allowed them a vehicle to make the change that they were already intending to make, but maybe just didn't know how to get there. And so I think the galvanizing part in the beginning was very, very, it was accessible. It was a lot more accessible, I would think. And I think the ask that we were making was also not super like life changing. I know a lot of people, especially now as we have had conversations about like why don't you, give to nonprofits. A lot of people are like, I don't have additional funding for that. I don't have additional disposable income to where I can do those things. And so again, I think maybe it was a lack of experience or maybe education in that every change doesn't need $1,000, check. What I was asking for at that time was a can or $5 or 10. And so I think for all those reasons, it was a little bit more simple to get involved. And as we, continued to grow, and of course, I got older, and the things that I was noticing weren't necessarily field trips anymore, but how can I get a microwave into this cafeteria? Or how can I fund a $6,000 wish? Or how can we support this hurricane or this, natural disaster? Of course, it started to grow, but I think the main, ethos of like people wanting to give, people wanting to be active, and wanting service to be a key core part of their life. Just having that easy vehicle, I guess, to do that would it also kind of contributed to the way that we were able to galvanize community. Because I do believe, and I think it's been my intention at the beginning for as extraordinary as the story sounds and can be at first, like my goal is for people to understand that this is not something that I don't think I was necessarily divinely called to only do. I think this is something that people can adopt and take and implement in their own lives, even if it's not at the nonprofit level, right? Like you can go outside and you see so many things that you want to solve. So solve them. Um, and so I think that just having like our nonprofit here has just been a great vehicle for people to do that, to be involved in that way, and to see the change that is happening since it is so local. Just when I consider all of the progress that we've made, all the different things that we've done, like none of them would be possible without the community support, whether that be family, my board, People in my neighborhood who have many times just at the drop of a dime just dropped off whatever they had to support whatever cause we were supporting. My church community, all of the different school communities I've been a part of. So it has more than anything been a community effort, and I think um, if I had to, even though you didn't ask this question, if I had to explain what I would hope the legacy of Chase's Chance looks like, I would hope that people don't really see me at all. I hope they see all of the people that it took to make all of these different things possible. And honestly, I would hope that it kind of acts as a mirror so they can see themselves in the work that we're doing as well.
I think it starts with yours and your family's outlook. And I bet if I asked you if you believe people are fundamentally good, I bet you'd answer yes. And you'd probably say, there's some exceptions. But, I kind of look at when I became a father several years ago, I started telling people that I figured out my job was not to screw him up too much because I believe he was a gift to
Mhm.
me and my wife. And you just look at children and they're so pure and so good. And the world, and when I say the world, all of us, parents included, chip away at that perfection a little
Mhm.
bit. And what your what your attitude kind of show your mindset, it shows me that in order for you to kind of keep pushing this boat out day after day, there's a belief that it's not about you, it's not about your family, but kind of putting the tools in people's hands to do good and to and the other thing I like the most, and you said all the components of this, but you're pretty hyper local. I think it bugs people sometimes when they live in an area where there are pretty severe challenges. There are
Mhm.
a lot of kids who can't afford the field trip, or a lot of children without basic dental hygiene, or can't afford lunch. All these things,
Mhm.
and you're the nonprofit wanting to go solve a problem halfway around the world, and I think it's all got to be solved. So don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I think it's especially cool to have this set of tools you basically have become with this organization for people to drive change locally. And I believe when you care for, I think it's a biblical reference, when you're kind of looking out for the least of these, the whole community lifts up. Like you can't have too much empathy.
Mhm.
You can't have too much care. That's something that once you get it going and have that mindset, then only great things will keep happening. And so are you? Have you seen this thing kind of feed on itself? Like with the people that get involved, you don't feel like you're like climbing a mountain and then starting all over again. Is it more like as you've matured and now you're 1 year away or so from finishing college at Wake Forest? What are what would be kind of the opportunities and challenges that are so different? Are you 20, 21 years old now?
I'll be 21 next month.
Yeah, so you started this thing when you were about 7,
Mhm.
right? So you've been in business almost as long as I have. I've been in business 16 years. You've been in business almost as long as I have. What's evolved over time is kind of the challenges and opportunities you see for Chase's Chance.
Honestly, I think one of the challenges was getting older because I think, like you were saying, like as children, you're kind of untainted by the world and you just have this really like childlike view of how things should be, how they are. You're not really thinking about logistics too much. It's just like pure dreams. And so, like, I found just the personal balance of getting older, starting to understand the interworkings of nonprofit life, like how money starts to come into play, having to start saying no once we got to a point in which like a lot of more people were starting to understand what it is that we were here for, having to start saying no, having to deal with lacks of funding. And I remember just like for a little bit in the teen years, it was just really difficult to get grants and get funding, just because, and understandably so, a lot of like bigger um, corporations or bigger community partners were kind of like, nah, we don't know about giving money to a 13-year-old, despite like our very clear evidence of the things that we were doing. So I remember there was like a period there that was just very frustrating because it felt like everything that was applied to was just like a no, 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 no. And so that was definitely challenging. But I think it, if you look at it from an alternative lens, like provided another opportunity to remain a little bit smaller, to rely more on our community. And I think having that proximity through reliance was super helpful because I was still very much in the community that I was seeking to help. And so, for as many people in the community that were donating, so many of them were like, hey, I figure you're probably kind of busy. So let me point some of these issues out to you too. And so that was super helpful because it allowed like this new kind of dialogue that was happening between community members of like, this is now what's going on. And so I think that kind of, in the moments in which the I felt like I couldn't contribute everything to the nonprofit, due to getting older, or I was feeling kind of discouraged about funding, like it was always so gratifying to see people having those dialogues and it being so intergenerational and crossing over the different communities that we had made, whether that be my school community overlapping with my church community and vice versa. And then I think that also kind of did what I wanted it to do, as far as people started to make their own nonprofits, make their own projects, do their own things. So even in those moments where I was just like, I don't know what we're doing, and having that um, like natural preteen teen insecurity of like, I don't know what I'm doing and I can't do this and this is horrible and everything sucks and it's just all bad. Like having the community there to kind of re pick you up, but also remind you that like you're not in this by yourself. And then I think like as we approach now, I think my biggest like point of challenge and opportunity is just like we are growing at such a very quick rate, and everyone on the board is in such a different place in life. Like my brother is in like those critical years of high school, and he serves as our youth advisor, and like you said, I'm about to graduate, and so thinking about all of these things presents a challenge, right? Because there's a lot of different changes happening, and we always want to fulfill our mission. um, so yes, while that's a challenge, I do think it's also an opportunity to be resourceful and look at things differently. And I think that's something that we have been consistent in, being innovative, being dynamic, due to the drawbacks that we might have. Because I was just talking to my mom the other day about like it's really a wonder what we've been able to accomplish with me being in school like the majority of the day, from like elementary school all the way to high school, coming home and like working and still getting so much done. I just think that's such a wonder because, some nonprofits do have people that are like working on this all day and this is their full time job. And I would hope that we can get to that point one day. Um, but I still think it's really, really impressive what we've been able to accomplish despite not necessarily having that.
What you're illustrating with all that um, validates a realization I thought I had a few years ago, and it's further validated by my own journey as an entrepreneur. It's funny now that I've realized we've both been in business about the same amount of time. Um, and I didn't start this business until I was 37. But the feelings were the same, kind of that feeling of nothing but dreams and utopia. And, Carly here, producer Carly, we're going to break that fourth wall. Carly, hey, Carly. Um, Carly was here in the very, very early days with me once we decided to grow it. And it's a totally different thing. Like if you aspire to grow, you're going to grow if you
Hmm.
keep being attentive to that. And then at a certain point, I hear it from entrepreneurs, whether they're doing 100,000 a year in revenue or several 100 million. At some point, it gets harder. It always does. It's just
Yeah.
law of averages, law of this, law of that. I didn't hear you calling out words like imposter syndrome, but I know that plagues a lot of women founders. It's plagued me. I I don't have any doubts about my ability to be creative and be a good writer and all that stuff, but running an operation like what you're doing, what I'm doing, it's different.
Hmm.
It's different, and so I've just kind of learned that people in the nonprofit world, the ones you would think of as social entrepreneurs, like they're not content to just make a difference at Colfax Elementary School. They want to then go up a level, and anybody in the Guilford County schools where you live, if they hear about a problem, they want to address it system wide. Then they start going to the Piedmont Triad, North Carolina, national, global, right?
Hmm.
And you're kind of swimming those choppier waters. And I think what's great is you sure you've had your moments of cynicism or skepticism about your ability to continue to lead kind of an upward trajectory, but the fact that you land in a place of yes, I can, um, is great. And I think anybody that would meet you would believe in your ability to do that, especially because you got something a lot younger than I did. You've been surrounded by people to help you. As far as what I'm most curious about, like I'm rooting for you to not get a job this time next year. I think you already have one. And I think with the right people around you and the right tools in your hands, I think you could start taking this thing even bigger with a degree under your belt, maybe even going to graduate school. What are the possibilities for you and Chase's chance? Like as you see, because last couple of years you haven't been able to really see past Wake Forest a whole lot,
Hmm. Hmm.
but that's coming into view, right? So, what do you see as kind of those next things on the horizon for you and the organization? If you say, I'm just going to go get a job, I'm going to get mad and turn this off.
Ooh, no. um, oh man, as you were talking, and I think one thing that has been super present for me throughout this whole interview is I don't know why, but I feel super, super grateful and just like grounded by the people that I have around me. Like whenever people I guess make observations about me and the things that I do, I kind of am just like, man, you must not know my grandma because if you knew her, then everything would just make sense. Like as far as just being a very determined spirit, I remember just watching her growing up, like always doing something. We are always laughing at her because she just genuinely could never sit down, like ever. She was never sitting down. Same thing for my grandfather who like retired at a very, very, very old age. And even like as I look at my parents, just like I've grown up just seeing them hit the pavement running. Like as for as long as I have can remember, my dad has worked 12-hour shifts. Like I just like remember those things, and even more than that, just growing up around very solid people who like giving is not a question. It's not like a if we're doing it. It's a matter of like when we're doing it. And I've also, I think, grown up around very entrepreneurial people. And so I don't know, that's just super present for me right now. But each and every one of them have said to me that post grad is probably the best thing for you to do, to go back to school. And that's what I will be doing as long as the application season goes as it is supposed to. But yeah, I think I've thought a lot about like, and maybe it is just the timing of approaching senior year and like thinking about what do you do now. Um, I have thought about a lot about like how this functions in life and what this looks like afterwards. I think my most immediate steps after graduation are to continue my education because I would want my introduction to being in this role full time to be something that I feel most confident about, and am able to like completely focus on. And I think I've spent the majority of my life doing Chase's Chance and school, doing Chase's Chance and something else. And so I would want like my introduction to doing this full time to be something that I can do full time. And so I know my immediate plans after graduation, like I said, are to go to a postgraduate program. Um, but I'm like always just super open. Who knows what this might be in an X amount of years, because I think the way that we are building and growing right now, I am inclined to say it's going to look super different by the time I finish like my education. So who knows what it'll look like by then. Yeah.
Well, I'm just glad that you're open so far to
Mhm.
the paths that I prescribed, and I just want you to stay completely closed-minded, getting a job, with one exception, and I think this is actually a likely exception, that you'll get some kind of stupid lucrative offer that you'll then turn around and bankroll Chase's chance to do even bigger things.
Mhm.
But I'd
Yeah, it would have to be a really stupid lucrative. But I think I knew coming into school that I didn't want to leave and immediately get a job, only because I feel as though if I get a job and I get into the practice of making money, I'm not going back to school.
let me just ask you something completely off the radar of my prepared questions.
Okay,
Um, you and I like talking about music sometimes. Um, what are you listening to these days?
great question. I have been in a very quiet R&B vibe right now. I was telling my mom that being in this role this summer has been the closest I feel like I've ever been to having like a real life job, as in like I'm working from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. And so by the time I get in my car in the afternoon, it's the funniest experience. I always used to like walk out to the garage and be like, "Why are you still sitting in the car? You need to come inside." And like now I understand. I understand. After work, I'm just sitting in the car and it's just silent. So whenever the music does come on, I find myself listening to like very subdued 90s R&B. And so for me, that's looked like some of Beyonce's old albums. Don't know why I've been listening to Brian McKnight a lot.
Wow.
Um, Usher a lot, the more quieter stuff. But I find that the theme is just that it's like as close to silent noise as possible. But yeah, so that's I've been laughing at myself for that because I have definitely felt every bit of like almost being 21 because additional noise is like no. So it's been super quiet.
So my theory about you is that you're actually in your mid 40s and you started this nonprofit in your early 30s,
Yeah.
just kind of masquerading as a young person.
I think that you found out my one true secret and now this is a groundbreaking journalistic effort. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, Chase. I'll do your plug for you. For those of you interested in learning more about Chase's Chance, the most awesome nonprofit of all time, visit www.
ChasesChanceInc.org.
They're recently rebranded.
Yes.
taste his chance. And thank you for that opportunity. That was so much fun.
Thank
And I
you.
got to be friends with your mom. What a
She's the
blessing she
coolest.
is to have as a friend too.
Hmm.
Um, so thank you, and looking forward to talking soon.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all so much.